In this video, I'm going to briefly talk about what are entities, okay? Because there's more people that have entities out there than not at this point, but with the timeline shifts and with the Guardians' helps, that's going to change. So, entity attachments can form during childhood, so we become accustomed to the entity's energy. So a lot of times people don't even know that they have an entity. Sometimes they will know, but they've kind of like just accepted it because it either like feeds them some kind of false sense of power or false sense of self, something like that, gives them like things that they want, but maybe it's not truly aligned with their Christic path, things like that. So, living with an entity attachment can cause harm and affect you mentally, emotionally, physically, and spiritually. So, entities, when we're just talking about an entity in general, you can really use entity to describe really anything. You know what I'm saying? An entity is neither good or bad, just the word. Since they're only forms of energy, so which can come in all shapes and sizes, frequencies, and some are benevolent and others are neutral and some are negative. You know what I'm saying? So what makes one negative per se, right? So energies of low frequencies, obviously, they're gonna leech onto your auric field. They do this, entities that are negative, they get through cuts. Like if you have a physical cut, when I was a young girl, I used to cut. I don't know why I used to do that, but I know there's a lot of other people who used to do that. But that is a form of like having like some entity trying to come in, or having some kind of like attachment to your field to make you do that kind of stuff. Like, I hate to be like I'm some Bible thumper. I promise I'm not, but really it is like an entity. It is kind of it is demonic in a way, but it doesn't make you demonic. I'm not calling anybody demonic who's done that, because that would make me demonic because I've done that. So anyways, it's really just a matter of clearing your field and things like that. So aurora cracks are number one attractor of entities. This happens through trauma, addictions, abuse. So what can weaken your aura? So addictions, like I said, which are, they create dependency, they create obsessions, they create attachment to this realm just in general. And we're talking about, drugs. I'm talking about, gluttony. I'm talking about, if you're addicted to food, if you're addicted to like money, if you're addicted to just, you're scared to die, like you're addicted to being a human being, things like that. That's a thing. So abuse causes cracks in our aura and causes us to be vulnerable and porous, which is how entities also get through. So yeah, what I was getting to is if you have like a cut or something like that, that puts a cut in your aura field too. So a lot of times if you get in a bad accident, they'll create some scenario, or they'll hijack your timeline and create some scenario where some major surgery needs to be done. I.e., example, back in December when I got my appendix taken out, it was an emergency appendectomy or something like that. But really, come to say, I learned to find out that it was just, some of the reversals on the other side trying to splice my timeline and things like that. It shit gets messy, but we can get through it, and that's the point I'm getting at. So anyways, so if you have unhealed trauma, abuse, you know what I'm saying, traumatic events fragment your soul. Also attracts parasitic entities that like resonate with that frequency. So these attachments feed off the dense energy associated with your trauma related to the abuse, and they can also do this like, especially if you haven't done like soul retrieval or anything like that. That's so important, because there could be, you could be feeling fine and things like that, and you could be doing everything you need to do, but you could still be feeling like drained, and it's because there's a part of you in a timeline somewhere in the space-time continuum, and there's an entity parasite siphoning off of that, and then you keep like, oh, I thought I healed this, but you keep thinking about it, and you're crying about it, and the whole time your loose just being siphoned. So illness, dealing with chronic illness. So disease is another one of those spell words in, spelling of the English language. Dis-ease. So a lot of disease manifest within human beings and within the universe and, Earth, because of a lack of ease, a lack of flow, of divine flow. So illness can definitely manifest. Again, like I said, they can make it to where like you get really sick, you have a big surgery, you think you have a big incision, you're all open up, and you know that's a perfect time to go in and cradle in there and do what they need to do energetically, right? So when you're sick, you're more subtle to position when dealing with when you're dealing with a persistent illness, you're more like vulnerable all the time. You're more porous all the time. So you're more like subtle to being kind of like taken over, not really just taken over. I wrote this down like a minute ago, but really just getting attachments. But eventually, yeah, if you know what I'm saying, people do get taken over. I see that, the more you wake up and you take off your rose-colored glasses and you see people for who they really are, you'll notice that they're like, it really is happening a lot. A lot of times, a lot of people are being taken over. They have a lot of entity attachments. This is where like a lot of the multiple personality disorder can manifest from. I'm not saying everybody who's been diagnosed with that has entities or is demonic or anything like that. Nothing like that, okay? So, invasive surgery. So again, after surgeries, dark entities from hospitals are more likely to attach to your auric field, and just in general, if there's like if there's a reversal entity on the other side, and if they want to, siphon you in some way, they'll do it. So it's so important to shield yourself and protect yourself, meditate, know yourself, get in rhythm, with, what your gut's telling you, listen to your gut and your heart. So this can happen, entity attachments can also happen because of your ancestral line. So sometimes, you come through the womb and you have an attachment because maybe your mom and dad had them and you're here to heal your ancestral lines, things like that. You can get them through family members, like if things happen between you and your family members, things like that. Past life activities. A lot of times, a lot of people come through the womb. We're bringing things from past lives that has nothing to do with the people we're around now, or we'll eventually meet somebody from a past life we met to, sever that tie, or, continue it, or, however that karmic may play out, or however those two individuals may react in that situation. Also living in certain places, certain places on, speaking about the grid work and ley lines of the earth, there's certain vortexes and things like that, like, certain cities are portals in America and all over the world. So, there's certain, if you live by certain cities and stuff like that, you could be really more subjugated to more paranormal activity and stuff like that, just because it has such a more rich history, so to speak, or it's always been very populated, or usually there's that rich history where something tragic or something like that has happened, right? And then again, meddling with spiritual world without precaution. So if you're someone who reads tarot like me, or you're someone, who, uses any kind of divination system that's not your own body, right? Or even when you're using your own body, it's so important to declare that you're working with the guardians and you're working with, only beings that respect that you're a divine co-creator being and that you're a Christic being, and then that they are also aligned with their Christos mission. And a lot of times, if it's a negative entity, they're going to, once you declare that, they're going to back off. Or if they do come to you, it's usually because they want to come to God, because that's exactly what's going to happen. They're going to get siphoned into a vortex and took back to God, right? And a lot of times they don't like that happening. So how can we tell if this has happened, right? So this is common manifestations if you have an entity attachment and things like that. So always feeling drained, disconnected from your body, like always disassociating, which will happen persistently. You could feel like a never-ending feeling of fatigue, since they feed off your energy centers and directly from your chakras. Wherever they leech on, they can leech, wherever, right? And you can manifest, you'll usually know if where someone's entity is by the, like, where is it sore? Where do you feel sick? Where's the illness at? And which energy center is by that? That's probably where that entity has hooked in. So what kind of disease manifests from that specific organ, then that's probably where that entity is siphoning or, doing its business. So unexplained behavioral changes. So you'll notice, like, sometimes people will be really like, you've been around someone who's just like psychotic, where like they instantly become somebody else, and like it's like they're Rambo. Like they can literally take Hulk down and they'll be like, 5'3", but they really got the guts and the glory and the strength for it, because it's like something else takes over them, really. Anyway, so again, unexplained behavioral changes, that's just an example. Even just being like, moody up and down. One day you feel this way, another way you feel that way. So mental health issues or mental illness is a big one, of having entity attachments or implants and things like that. Cravings for drugs and alcohol. So the biggest way that they get through to us, and this tells you that the government's not for us, is through drugs, through prescription pills, through weed, through alcohol, all that. That makes you porous, that makes you vulnerable, and that makes you easy to click into, and it's easy to take over your vessel. There's a reason why they call alcohol spirits, you know what I mean? And you can notice your sleep patterns are fucked. Like you could be trying to stay up a lot, or you maybe you have really bad nightmares, or trying to go to sleep, or maybe you're just trying to sleep a lot. You're real depressed. You don't really want to get out. You want to stay in the dark all the time. You don't really want to take care of yourself. That's a big sign. If you were somebody who took care of yourself, and then all of a sudden you don't care about brushing your teeth, things like that. And I get it. Sometimes it's just depression. It's not entity, but a lot of times they correspond and they go hand in hand. So emotional oppression, if you've experienced that in your life, that can create entities. Emotional oppression can even create like poltergeists, really. Like if someone's got a very powerful mind, and if they've got a lot of pent up anger, I don't know if anyone knows about poltergeists, but yeah, that's a whole nother rabbit hole. An increased or a decreased appetite. So for me, my personal story, I had an entity attachment back when I was like 16, 17, real bad, when I started getting into like harder drugs, and I literally started to like make myself bulimic. I've always been a skinny girl, you know what I'm saying? I've always been like a fucking stick, I used to always wish to like, have curves, literally, but I would make myself sick. I wouldn't eat. I would restrict myself. I'd restrict myself because I didn't want to eat. I felt like eating would just make me live longer. That was definitely a big sign of like, okay, girl, you got something else in your field, right? Or you can have, again, an increase. Maybe you're eating so much you can't stop. You want just sweets. You want things that are bad for you, things like that, or odd shit. Like, you know what I'm saying? You want to eat toilet paper. Like the My Strange Addiction and stuff like that, when the girl likes to sniff the fucking shit. Like, I'm sorry. Anyways, sleep paralysis is an attachment, is another form of having an entity attachment, or just having some kind of, definitely having some kind of like dream gates open in your dream time and stuff like that. It's really easy to get in there and fuck with you in the astral, and sleep paralysis is a big one, where the incubus and succubus. Persistent and unexplainable sadness or low mood. So maybe like, let's say, you had a good upbringing, and you know what I'm saying, you don't really have a reason to be sad, and you're just always really sad and gloomy, and you're like, fuck this world, and I'm like, I'm done, I'm out of it, and and that's you like 25 out of 8, like that's you for a while, more than like least, then you probably have some stuff in your field that you need to release and get removed and dissolved and things like that. So just outbursts of irritability, especially with those that are closest to you. So a lot of time that entities, they take over your big strong centers, so like your heart, your chakra center, things like that. They'll take away your vision. So maybe you used to be very imaginative and have vivid dreams, and now you're like, you're all black, you don't see nothing. Or like when you really love somebody, you'll notice like people who are on drugs, because I was on drugs at one point, usually, it's the ones they love that are hurting the worst, even worse than the addict. And I've also been on the other coin with my mom and my dad, too. So, it's a double-edged sword for sure. So, disassociation. You find yourself disassociating a lot, you know what I'm saying? Or just going off in la la land, maybe like even having some perverse views. Be honest with yourself. If you got perverse, distorted like thinking and stuff like that, it's probably because you need to have your energy system cleared. Don't judge yourself, but obviously like check that shit, right? Paranoia. You can feel like someone's always looking at you. Like, you know, you're always looking over your shoulder, like someone's always watching you or something like that. Or like, you know, always someone's always out to get you. You got to stay a step ahead. Things like that. Isolation. Always wanting to isolate yourself. Wanting to be in the dark 24/7. You know, actually not liking the light type shit, right? Not liking the sun. Feeling like you're a prisoner in your own body, like, you know, you're no longer your best friend, that you know that, like, a lot of times we are aware that something else is going on, but we can't just name it, so we're just like, what the fuck is wrong with me, you know? And you can just feel like a prisoner in your own body. Been there, done that. I'm not judging anyone. So if you see, like, shadows, you know what I'm saying, maybe from your peripheral vision, if you're really, like, relaxing there, like that one video I made about my shadow figure experience, where, like, I knew I had entity attachments then because, well, now I know I had entity attachments, but then I thought I was seeing something paranormal, but I saw these shadowy figures just sitting on my legs when I was really, like, just totally intoxicated. But, you know, maybe you see, like, shadowy mist on the side of you or something like that, or orbs, or you hear footsteps, hearing your name, knocking. Again, like the schizophrenia. I'm not saying everyone who's schizophrenia has attachments, but you got to think. I think people who have schizophrenia, a lot of 9 times out of 10, they're just, you know, dialed into different realms than we are, whether that's good or bad or whatever, and they're hearing things that we can't. So they're usually getting fucked with heavily. And I can speak because I'm someone who works at a facility for people who have mental health issues and things like that, mental disabilities. So I see it. You know, I definitely believe that people who are schizophrenic, a lot of times they're, again, just really psychic, you know, tapped in and tuned to some kind of realm, whether it's good or bad. And the poor souls get tortured even more, and they get drugs thrown down their throat, and they get told that they're crazy. It's just fucked up. It's really sad. I sympathize. So once you begin to see more physical you can start to see more manifestations of the physical entity, things like that, especially if you become aware of it. Yeah, so feeling watched, experiencing jolting night terrors. And yeah, those are the most common manifestations if you have, like, an entity. Again, just getting sick a lot, maybe having infections, you know, wherever it is in your body, having a lot of infections, you know, things like that all the time. Or, like, maybe you had, like, a parasite, maybe you need to do a parasite cleanse, you know, from eating some raw sushi or something like that. Really, you know, take care of yourself. This is all I got about entities for now. I'm definitely going to go more in on this topic, and I love you guys so much. Omni love, absolute healing.